Happy Friday. Welcome back. Concepts and Training, diving into speed mechanics for dummies. It's basically just trying to simplify speed mechanics for sprinting and the two main components of sprinting. So what we look at when we look at sprinting, we have acceleration phases and we have top end speed phases. Realistically, acceleration from a basic standpoint is looking at how fast you can get up to a top speed. Your top end speed is what is the maximal amount of speed you can use and hold for any kind of duration, right? So when we look at trying to optimize these two things, realistically, acceleration is obviously your gas pedal, and cruise control is that top end speed. So what we look at when we're looking at this, these two phases get broken up into distinctive segments. So when we look at acceleration, there's a couple key concepts that we need to understand. The first, and we really look at it from Darian Barr's perspective on acceleration mechanics, the first thing we're really gonna look at is being able to, one, get a forward body lean that is long and extended. Now in this long position, I'm gonna see if I can even get something to hold on to here. When we get in this position here with acceleration mechanics, we're trying to get in a forward body lean, hips are gonna be extended here, and then we're trying to be able to get in a position where we can drive a knee forward. Now in this position, the one thing we're gonna look for is a steep shin angle, right? So we've got a forward body lean, ball of foot is kind of our ground contact point because we're gonna try to use that reflexive aspect of the foot to be able to drive forward. So when we look at it, we're trying to get that forward lean, the more we can get here. So the ground contact is gonna set us up to a position where we can drive backwards. So that next step is gonna be in a position where we can move forward and repeat that aspect of sprinting, right? So we get in that acceleration phase, and just trying to show you here on this PVC pipe, it's a little difficult, but trying to get in a point where we can move and drive forward and keep to enough to get in that next position, right? We're gonna try to repeat that. Now as we go out, we'll start to transition out each step and we start to get up taller, right? Which is where we get to top end speed. So when we look at that acceleration phase, realistically 10 to 20 yards depending on how good you are. Elite athletes, so you look at your like track sprinters for the Olympics, they're gonna be closer to like 30, all right? But being able to identify those positions of keeping a nice forward body lean, keeping a steep shin angle, because when you apply force, you're pushing the ground back, so you can push yourself forward, building up to a tall position where we can get into top end speed and being able to control those mechanics. What you'll see, and if you watch elite sprinters, what ends up happening is we get into that position, toe generally stays up or at least parallel to the ground, and that leg is coming back and we're contacting the ground almost directly under the hip. And it's a very slight and subtle push forward, right? So the ground contact time is very, very low, all right? The next thing you see is a recovery phase. So if we break this down, that top end speed, we still have extended hips, but that knee coming up and in front, being able to move, ball of the foot comes down, contacts the ground, and then as it extends back, right? We can even see my back leg already back here has been in that position. That heel is gonna come up and drive forward. You'll notice that you see it a lot with field sport athletes versus sprinters. The back end of that mechanic, or the back side of the body, gets really extended and we get this crazy whip. And the knee gets a little low and we get this crazy, we end up spending a lot of time behind and sometimes even crouched over and in this cycle here. When we look at trying to maximize and make it the most efficient, your top end speed will ultimately be in this position where we can get up, that foot comes out, we're contacting the ground right underneath the hip extends, and that heel comes right up under the butt. So we're minimizing the backside of that gait cycle, being able to drive up, minimizing it, and being able to move, okay? So acceleration phase, what you're really looking at, 10 to 20 yards, being able to get in that leaned in position, being able to drive, having a steep body angle and a steep shin angle to push back and accelerate through, and then being able to get into a top end speed mechanic and being able to rise gradually in this position where we're nice and tall, that knee and that ball of the foot stay up high, ground contact just in front of the hip, recovering in this short cycle here instead of this long exaggerated whip, this nice quick cycle where we get back up in front and are able to really contact that ground hard. In full speed, you'll see that back end looks higher, but when we get it on the front side, when we start to realize how quick that whip is out in front, we can think of it as this tiny little circle. That's just some very basic breakdown. Like I said, speed mechanics for dummies. That's what the acceleration phase looks like, and the top end speed phase looks like. When we actually look at training those things, we can look at a couple different ways, but we can dive into those on other Fridays for some concepts and training.